The smoke filled every corner of the corridor, and for a moment, even the torches seemed to lose their will to burn. Kael did not step back. He did not reach for a weapon. He simply closed his eyes and listened, the way his father had taught him decades ago, when the mountains still remembered the first Lycan Kings. The assassin lunged. Kael moved before the blade even left its sheath, catching the man's wrist mid-strike and twisting until the obsidian dagger clattered against the marble floor. The runes etched into its surface flickered once, then dimmed, as if the weapon itself understood it had failed. "You're fast," the assassin muttered through gritted teeth. "Faster than the stories say." "The stories rarely tell the truth," Kael answered calmly. "Who sent you?" Silence. Kael's grip tightened, not with cruelty, but with the quiet patience of a man who had faced far worse in his lifetime. "I will ask you once more, and this time you will answer." The assassin's masked face twitched, something between fear and defiance. "You already carry death in your bloodline, Your Majesty," he whispered. "The child in that sanctuary was never meant to breathe past tonight." Before Kael could respond, the man wrenched free, slamming his palm against the floor. A second crystal shattered beneath his hand, and the corridor exploded into a blinding flash of white light. When the smoke cleared, the assassin was gone, leaving nothing behind but the shattered dagger and a faint smell of burnt ash. Kael stood motionless, staring at the space where the man had vanished. His jaw tightened. Someone inside his own palace had allowed this to happen. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Down in the hidden chamber beneath the Queen's sanctuary, Elara had heard none of it. The thick stone walls swallowed every sound from above, leaving her alone with the flickering crystal light and the ancient journal now trembling faintly in her hands. She turned another page. The ink had faded with time, but the words remained legible, written in a delicate, hurried hand, as though the author had known she was running out of time to tell her story. "If you are reading this," the page began, "then the key has found its rightful bearer. I am sorry I could not tell this truth while I lived. But some truths are too dangerous to speak aloud, even within these walls." Elara's breath caught. She read on. "I was once called queen, not by blood, but by choice. The moon goddess does not crown kings and queens through birthright alone. She crowns those willing to protect what matters most, even at the cost of their own happiness." Elara's hands trembled as she turned to the next page. A drawing filled the parchment, the same family she had seen before, the king, the queen, and the child between them, all standing beneath a crescent moon. Beneath the illustration, a single line remained. "They call me a traitor for loving a man cursed by prophecy. But love was never the curse. Silence was." Elara closed her eyes, her heart pounding against her ribs. It was almost as though she were reading her own story, written centuries before she was born. Far above, in the private study reserved only for the king's closest counsel, Lady Seraphine paced slowly across the marble floor, her long emerald gown trailing behind her like a shadow that refused to let go. The hooded stranger from earlier stood near the window, arms folded, watching the snow fall over the palace grounds. "The assassin failed," Seraphine said flatly. "He was never meant to succeed," the stranger replied. "He was meant to be seen." Seraphine turned sharply. "Seen? You risked exposing us for nothing more than a distraction?" "Not a distraction," the hooded figure corrected. "A message. The king now knows someone within these walls wants the child dead. He will look inward. He will suspect his council, his guards, even you." Seraphine's lips curled into something close to admiration, though her eyes remained cold. "You wanted him distracted. I wanted him afraid," the stranger said. A king who fears betrayal from within will never notice the danger creeping from beyond his borders. Seraphine walked toward the window, watching the snow gather over the courtyard where, hours earlier, Kael had knelt beside a woman the entire kingdom believed had vanished forever. "She's the key to all of this," Seraphine murmured. "Not the boy. Her." The stranger said nothing, only tightened his grip around the black, crystal staff resting against his shoulder. "The prophecy never spoke of the child alone," Seraphine continued. "It spoke of a bond broken and reborn. If the bond reforms, then everything we've built collapses," the stranger finished. Neither of them noticed the raven perched silently on the windowsill outside, its dark eyes watching every word exchanged between them. Meanwhile, deep within the sanctuary, Rowan stirred from his sleep, his small voice humming the same unfamiliar melody that had echoed through the hidden chamber only moments earlier. He opened his eyes slowly, blinking at the crystal ceiling above him, before sitting upright with a strange, quiet certainty. "Mama," he called softly. No answer. He looked around the empty room, his silver eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. "Mama, where did you go?" Somewhere beneath his feet, unseen and unheard, Elara knelt over the ancient journal, unaware that her son had awakened, unaware that the very melody guiding her toward the truth had also stirred something ancient within the palace walls, something that had waited centuries for a voice like his to call it forward. The crystals along the walls of the hidden chamber pulsed once more, brighter this time, illuminating a section of the wall Elara had not noticed before. Carved into the stone was an inscription, worn nearly smooth by time, yet still readable if one knew where to look. She reached out, brushing away centuries of dust. "The first bond breaks the curse. The second bond breaks the silence. The third bond breaks the crown." Elara's fingers froze against the cold stone. 3 bonds, not one. She had believed, for 5 long years, that rejecting Kael had shattered a single, fatal connection foretold by prophecy. But if the inscription spoke true, then what she had broken was only the first of 3. And if there were more bonds yet to come, then her sacrifice had only delayed the very fate she had tried to prevent. Footsteps echoed faintly above her, hurried and urgent. Elara quickly gathered the journal, the necklace, and the small knitted wolf, tucking them beneath her cloak before ascending the winding staircase as quietly as she could. She emerged from behind the mural just as Kael entered the sanctuary, his expression tense, his eyes scanning the room until they landed on her. "You should not have gone down there alone," he said, his voice quieter than she expected. Elara straightened, clutching the hidden objects beneath her cloak. "I didn't know it was there until tonight." Kael studied her carefully, something unreadable passing behind his silver eyes. "An assassin came for your son." The word struck her like ice water. "Rowan," she gasped, moving past him toward the sleeping mat where her son had been resting. But Rowan was already awake, sitting quietly near the edge of the healing spring, watching the water ripple gently beneath the moonlight filtering through the chamber's high windows. "I'm all right, Mama," he said softly, without turning around. "The bad man is gone." Elara knelt beside him, pulling him close despite his calm reassurance. "How do you know that?" Rowan tilted his head, his silver eyes catching the moonlight in a way that made even Kael pause near the doorway. "Because she told me," Rowan whispered. "Who?" Elara asked carefully. "The lady in my dreams," Rowan said simply. "She said the bad man would come, and she said the king would stop him." Kael's expression shifted, something between disbelief and quiet recognition settling across his features. He had heard whispers of children born with the old gifts, children who could see fragments of the future through dreams passed down from ancestors long since gone. But he had never truly believed such gifts still existed. Until now. "Rowan," Kael said gently, kneeling to meet the boy's eyes. "Can you tell me more about her?" "The lady in your dreams," Rowan nodded slowly. She's sad, he said. She waited a long time for someone to remember her. Remember her how? Elara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Rowan looked up at his mother, his small face unusually serious for a child his age. She said, you already know her name, he said. You just haven't remembered it yet. The chamber fell silent, the only sound the gentle trickle of the healing spring beside them. Elara's mind raced through every possibility, every fragment of the journal she had just read, every whispered rumor she had heard throughout her years of hiding. A queen without a crown. A woman erased from history. A truth buried beneath centuries of silence. Kael rose slowly, his gaze shifting from the boy to Elara, something unspoken passing between them for the first time in 5 long years. We need to speak, he said quietly. Alone. Elara hesitated, glancing toward Rowan, who had already drifted back into a peaceful sleep despite the tension surrounding him. She nodded. They stepped toward the far end of the sanctuary, near the tall stained-glass windows overlooking the snow-covered courtyard below. For a long moment, neither of them spoke, the weight of 5 years settling heavily between them. Finally, Kael broke the silence. Why did you leave? Elara closed her eyes, feeling the familiar ache rise within her chest. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Try me, Kael said, his voice steady despite the storm clearly building behind his eyes. Elara took a slow breath, steadying herself before finally speaking the truth she had carried alone for 5 long years. I saw a prophecy, she said quietly, hidden beneath the temple, the night before our binding ceremony. It said that if the sacred bond were completed, you would die. Not eventually. That very night. Kael's expression remained unreadable, though something flickered behind his eyes. Disbelief, mixed with something closer to recognition. You rejected me, he said slowly, to save my life. Elara nodded, tears finally slipping free after 5 years of restraint. I thought breaking the bond would stop it. I thought if I made you hate me, you would live, and the kingdom would be spared whatever darkness the prophecy warned of. Kael was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the falling snow. And Rowan, he finally asked. Elara's voice trembled. I didn't know I was carrying him until months after I left. By the time I realized, hunters from the Shadow Pack were already searching for anyone connected to the old bloodlines. I couldn't risk bringing him back. Not until I understood what he was. And do you understand now? Kael asked. Elara shook her head slowly. Less than I did 5 years ago. Kael turned to face her fully, his silver eyes searching hers with an intensity she hadn't seen since the night of their broken ceremony. For 5 years, he said quietly, I believed you left because you never loved me at all. I never stopped, Elara whispered. The words hung between them, fragile and unguarded, 5 years of pain finally breaking through the walls both of them had built to survive. Before either of them could say more, a soft chime echoed from beyond the sanctuary doors, followed by hurried footsteps. A guard entered, bowing quickly. Your Majesty, forgive the intrusion. Lady Seraphine requests an urgent audience. She claims to have information regarding tonight's attack. Kael's expression hardened instantly, the vulnerability from moments before folding neatly beneath the mask of a king once more. Tell her I will meet with her shortly, he said. The guard bowed and disappeared down the corridor. Kael turned back to Elara. Stay here. Keep Rowan close. Trust no one outside these walls until I return. Elara nodded, though something in her chest tightened with unease. As Kael turned to leave, she called out softly. Kael. He paused. Be careful, she whispered. Whoever sent that assassin may not stop at one attempt. Kael's eyes softened briefly before hardening once more into quiet resolve. They've already made their move, he said. Now it's mine. He disappeared through the sanctuary doors, leaving Elara alone with her sleeping son, the ancient journal, and a truth far larger than either of them had ever imagined. Meanwhile, in the private council chamber, Lady Seraphine awaited the king's arrival, her expression carefully composed despite the storm of calculations racing behind her eyes. The hooded stranger had vanished moments earlier, slipping away through a hidden passage known only to the palace's oldest servants. When Kael entered, Seraphine bowed low, her voice laced with practiced concern. "Your Majesty, I came the moment I heard an assassin inside the palace itself. This is unforgivable. Who else knew about the woman and her son staying within the sanctuary?" Kael asked, his tone measured but firm. Seraphine hesitated, just long enough for Kael to notice. "Only your closest guards, Your Majesty. And myself, of course." Kael studied her carefully. 5 years of ruling had taught him to recognize the smallest cracks in a well-rehearsed performance, and tonight, something in Seraphine's composure felt slightly too polished, slightly too rehearsed. "I want the palace searched," Kael said. "Every corridor, every hidden passage. If someone within these walls betrayed us tonight, I intend to find them." "Of course, Your Majesty," Seraphine replied smoothly. "I'll see to it personally." As she turned to leave, Kael's voice stopped her once more. "Seraphine."
She paused.
"You've served my counsel faithfully for many years," Kael said quietly. "I trust that loyalty remains unshaken." Seraphine turned, offering the faintest, most practiced smile. "Always, Your Majesty." She bowed once more and disappeared through the chamber doors, leaving Kael alone with his thoughts and a growing suspicion he could not yet name. Elsewhere, deep beneath the palace, within tunnels forgotten by all but a select few, the hooded stranger met with 3 other cloaked figures gathered around a single black candle. "The king grows suspicious," one of the figures muttered. "Let him," the stranger replied calmly. "Suspicion without proof is nothing more than noise." "And the child?" another asked. "The child is not our concern tonight," the stranger said. "The journal is." A tense silence settled over the group. "If the woman uncovers the truth hidden within those pages," the stranger continued, "everything the Shadow Order has built across 3 generations collapses in a single night." "Then we take the journal," the first figure said. The stranger shook his head slowly.
"No."
"We take her." The candle flickered once, casting long shadows across the tunnel walls, before the figures disappeared into the darkness, leaving nothing behind but silence and the faint scent of burnt wax. Back within the sanctuary, Elara sat quietly beside her sleeping son, the ancient journal resting open across her lap. She traced her fingers over the faded illustration once more, studying the crescent necklace drawn around the child's neck in the old drawing, identical to the one now resting within her palm. She turned another page, her breath catching as new words emerged beneath the flickering crystal light. "My daughter carries the mark of the first blood," the passage read. "Should anything happen to me before she comes of age, know this. The throne was never meant for conquest. It was meant for protection. Whoever remembers this truth holds the power to end the cycle of fear that has plagued our kingdom for centuries." Elara's hands trembled. A daughter, not a son. She flipped back through the earlier pages, searching for any mention of what became of the queen's child, but the following pages had been torn away, leaving only jagged edges where the truth had once been recorded. Someone had removed them deliberately. Elara closed the journal slowly, glancing toward her sleeping son, then toward the ancient mural depicting the woman shielding 2 wolves and a hidden child beneath her arms. If the queen's daughter had survived centuries ago, carrying the same bloodline now flowing through Rowan's veins, then the prophecy was never solely about a king and his heir. It was about an unbroken line of protectors, hidden through generations, waiting for the right moment to reclaim what had been stolen from them. and someone within the palace was determined to make sure that moment never came. Hours passed in careful silence as guards searched every corridor of the palace, though none uncovered any trace of the assassin or those who had aided his escape. By the time dawn's pale light began creeping across the snow-covered courtyard, Kael returned to the sanctuary, exhaustion evident in his tired eyes. Elara rose to meet him, the journal still clutched tightly in her hands. "Did you find him?" she asked. Kael shook his head. "Whoever helped him escape knew this palace better than my own guards." Elara hesitated before extending the journal toward him. "There's something you need to see." Kael studied her carefully before accepting the worn leather book, flipping through the pages she indicated. His expression shifted from curiosity to quiet disbelief as he read the passage regarding the queen's missing daughter. "This changes everything," he murmured. "If there's truth to it," Elara said, "then Rowan isn't the only piece of this prophecy. He's part of something far older, a bloodline meant to protect this kingdom, not destroy it." Kael closed the journal slowly, his gaze drifting toward the sleeping child resting peacefully nearby. "Then whoever sent that assassin tonight didn't fear Rowan simply because of his bloodline," Kael said quietly. "They feared what his bloodline represents. A threat to whatever they've built in the shadows," Elara finished. Kael nodded grimly. "And they'll stop at nothing to keep that threat buried." Outside the sanctuary windows, the first light of morning spread slowly across Moonfall City, gilding rooftops and frozen fountains in soft golden light. Yet despite the peaceful scene unfolding beyond the glass, both Kael and Elara understood that the calm surrounding them was nothing more than an illusion, a fragile pause before the true storm arrived. For within the palace walls, hidden among trusted advisors and familiar faces, someone continued weaving a plot centuries in the making, one designed not merely to eliminate a single child, but to erase an entire truth the kingdom had long forgotten. And as the morning bells finally rang across Moonfall City, neither Kael nor Elara yet realized just how close that hidden enemy truly stood, waiting patiently for the perfect moment to strike again. Because sometimes the greatest danger isn't the one lurking in the shadows outside the palace walls. Sometimes it's the one standing quietly beside you, smiling warmly, while secretly counting down the days until everything you love comes crashing down. And in Moonfall Palace, that countdown had already begun. If you've made it this far, thank you for staying with Elara, Kael, and little Rowan through everything they've faced tonight. Their story is far from over, and the truth hidden within that ancient journal is only the beginning of something much larger. Let us know in the comments what you think is really happening inside that palace, and who you believe is secretly working against them. If you enjoyed this chapter, don't forget to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next, because in the world of Moonfall, no one's loyalty can ever truly be trusted, not even those closest to the crown.